Welcome to week 2 of the Transition to Organic webinar series for crop producers. We'll be presenting today on steps to organic certification. We're very happy to see you all back again this week. This series is a collaboration between Community Alliance with Family Farmers, UC Cooperative Extension, and the UC Organic Agriculture Institute. I'm Grace Jackson, the Farmer Services Central Valley Regional Lead at CAFF. Margaret Lloyd helped collaborate to bring this series to life from UC Cooperative Extension. And now I'm going to pass it on to Katharina Ullmann from the UC Organic Agriculture Institute to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again. As Grace said, my name is Katharina Ullmann. I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Coordinator for the UC Organic Agriculture Institute and one of the co-organizers of this webinar series. We're so happy to have you here, that you took time out of your day to be here today, and are excited to hear what questions you have for us. Thanks.
We would like to extend a big thank you to our funders for making this webinar series possible. Our funders for the webinar series are CDFA Office of Agricultural Resilience and Sustainability, the CDFA State Organic Program, and the USDA Transition to Organic Partnership Program. As I mentioned, this webinar will be available to watch on the UC OAI and CAFF YouTube channels after the webinar series, and you'll receive an email with presentation slides and resources every week after the webinar. The weekly structure is similar to last week. We started a little bit late, so our timeline has been a little bit impacted, but we are in the welcome now. We will soon move to our official presentation. We will save the last probably 10 minutes or so for Q&A. We will end with a closing poll, and then we invite everyone to stay on for our optional office hours from 1:15 to 2, where you'll be able to ask additional questions to Katharina and myself, who are your speakers for this week, as well as Claire Davis from Oregon Tilth, who is online for as our technical expert. If you are registered, you should have received my email last Friday sharing the resource guide that accompanies this webinar series. You can find Zoom links, presentation links, additional resources, and optional OSP homework for each week if you want to make progress on your OSP as we go. Katharina, I'll pass it on to you.
Great, thank you so much. So we're excited to be in week 2 of this webinar series focused on transitioning to organic cropping systems. Today we're going to be talking about the steps to organic certification. Next slide, please. Okay, so steps to organic certification. Grace and I will be talking today about a couple of different things related to the organic certification process. So, so next slide, please. Great. So today we're going to be talking about the steps to organic certification. I'll be going over that. You've heard that a couple of times now. Then Grace will be providing an introduction to organic system plans. These are really important forms that you have to fill out as part of the certification process. And then after that, she'll be providing an overview of record keeping requirements. And then I will share some information on where to get technical and financial support. So that's an overview of the presentation. So when people think about organic agriculture, they tend to think of a way of farming or ranching that limits the use of harmful synthetic chemicals. In the United States, organic farming is regulated by the USDA's National Organic Program, which is also called the NOP. These regulations outline how to grow something organically and how to become certified organic so you can use that official USDA organic label. Now, according to these regulations, Organic production integrates cultural, biological, and mechanical practices to foster cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. So that's the official definition of organic agriculture according to the regulations. Here in California, the NOP works with the California Department of Food and Agriculture State Organic Program, county agricultural commissioners, and private certifiers to ensure the integrity of the organic label. The NOP makes the rules and has the final say in relation to enforcement and oversight. Organic certifiers are private companies that certify whether an operation is organic or not. We've listed some of the most popular crop certifiers here on this slide. As part of the certification process, organic certifiers will have you fill out a form called an organic system plan, which Grace will talk about later. And certifiers are the group that grants organic certification. So they're the ones that say whether your practices are in line with organic regulation. Certifiers hire inspectors to visit operations once a year to ensure that the things you wrote in your organic system plan match what's happening on the ground on your farm. The CDFA State Organic Program works with the NOP and certifiers to address any compliance issues and conduct spot inspections. They also require California organic farmers to register with them. That is something required by state organic regulations. And county agricultural commissioners support the SOP in their efforts by helping people register with the state organic program and by conducting inspections for the state organic program. So the people you might have visiting your farm are inspectors that work for certifiers or people from the state organic program or county ag commissioners when you're certified organic. Um, so if a farmer is certified organic, they can use this logo, which tells people that you produced your crop using organic practices. In California, all farmers that want to be certified want to call their, excuse me, all farmers that want to call their product organic need to register with the CDFA State Organic Program. And farms that make more than $5,000 in gross sales also need to become certified organic by a third party, so by an organic certifier. Farms and ranches can choose to be all organic and only sell organic products, or they might be a split operation that sells organic and non-organic products. Farms that are split operations need to be extra careful to make sure that there is no contamination or commingling of organic and non-organic products. So, in practice, organic farms can look really different, but they all follow the same NOP regulations. This means that they use organic approved practices, they keep records, and get inspected once a year by a certifier. And here in California, they also register with the CDFA State Organic Program. Your operation can be certified in crop, livestock, wild crop, or organic handling. And this seminar series is really focused on rules and practices related to crop production. If you are, for example, a vegetable farmer who also wants to sell organic chicken eggs, you would need both to be certified in organic crop production and organic livestock production. But if you're only selling vegetables, you would only have to get certified in organic crop production. There's slightly different rules for each of these scopes of operation. So, what are the steps to organic certification? So the first step is to get prepared. You're all doing this by participating in this webinar series and to choose a certifier. And to what I mean to get prepared is the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a market for your organic products. So you might want to start reaching out to buyers and see who might sell your organic products. The next thing that you'll want to do is really begin to understand the regulations. And one of the most important rules to know about is this one. So to be one of the big rules is that land needs to be free of prohibited inputs for 3 years prior to certification. This means that if you applied a prohibited herbicide in January of 2026, you can't get certified until January 2029. You can start the application process, you can fill out the forms, but you can't use that official logo until January 2029. Alternatively, if you have not applied any prohibited inputs in the last 3 years, you could start getting certified right now and start using the label within 4 months. So that means if you are renting a new piece of land and it hasn't been farmed in the past 3 years, you could get certified right now. If you recently purchased a piece of land and the previous owner farmed it but didn't use any prohibited materials in the last 3 years, you can also get certified right now. We'll talk more about what products are allowed and not allowed in 2 weeks' time. But in general, synthetic pesticides, synthetic herbicides, synthetic fungicides, synthetic rodenticides, synthetic fertilizers, in general, are not allowed in organic systems. Genetically modified seeds and organisms are also not allowed in organic systems. Besides understanding the regulations, it's really important to start using organic practices and getting used to organic practices. This is especially important if you haven't been farming organically, is to start getting used to the different practices. And we'll be providing an introduction to different organic farming practices in the upcoming weeks. We'll hear presentations on managing soil health, nutrients, pests, weeds, diseases, and biodiversity organically. But really, again, starting to practice using these different management strategies are going to help prepare you for when you become certified. So the second step, as part of the first step still, is to also choose a certifier. So there are over 20 organic certifiers registered within California. The CDFA State Organic Program maintains a list of those certifiers. Some of the most popular certifiers are listed on this slide here. It's important to call a couple of different certifiers, ask them your questions. They typically have really great applicant support teams, but because there's so many, you're going to have to choose one. So maybe focus on three and find out how much they cost. Ask them to give you a estimate for how much it will cost to certify your specific operation. You can also see what their customer service is like. So for example, if you really like to talk on the phone, you'll want a certifier who has really great phone support service. You might also ask what scopes or other certifications they offer. So maybe you also need a food safety certification for your operation. Some organic certifiers might also offer food safety certifications. Another thing you consider is what kind of language support they offer, if they offer support in languages other than English. Another great tool to choose a certifier is this tool developed by CAFF, the organization that Grace works for. So this is an organic certifier comparison tool that you can look through and compare the most popular certifiers here in California. Um, so once you've chosen your certifier, they'll send you an application packet. And as part of that application packet, they'll give you an organic system plan to fill out. And the organic system plan, as I said earlier, is a form that describes your farm, that your certifier will provide that basically describes your management practices. Grace is going to get into the details of organic system plans in a minute, but know that as part of the application process, you'll fill out this form and you'll typically pay an application fee. Um, Once you've submitted your application and your organic system plan, the next thing you're going to want to do is register with the CDFA State Organic Program. There is a fee associated with this step, and if you go onto their website, you'll see what the fee schedule is. The fee schedule is based on what your gross sales are and can range from $75 to $3,000, at least as of right now in 2026. You can register online through the CDFA State Organic Program website, or you can go to your county ag commissioner and they can help you get registered. Um, After that step, you'll wait as your certifier reviews your organic system plan. They're going to make sure that everything you wrote down is in line with the organic regulations, the USDA NOP organic regulations. If everything looks good, they're going to send an inspector out to your farm. And so that inspector is going to make sure that what you wrote down in your organic system plan matches what is happening on the ground, matches what's happening on your farm. Inspectors will write a report summarizing any issues of concern they observe. They'll also let you know if they notice anything. And then the inspector will submit their report to the certifier again to review. One thing to note is that inspectors are not allowed to give technical advice. We'll talk more about the inspection process and how to prepare for that in week 10 of this webinar series. So once the certifier has the inspector's report, the certifier will review the inspector's report, address any issues of concerns with you. If everything looks good, though, they'll go ahead and grant you certification. And this is when you can actually start using the USDA organic logo. There is a fee associated with this step, and typically it's more expensive the larger or more complex your operation is. So at this point, you're selling your organic products, you're in your groove. The next thing that you'll do is just continue to run your organic operation, keep really good records. Record keeping is a really important part of the organic integrity program. And then update your organic system plan. So, for example, if you start using a new product, you'll want to check with your certifier and update your plan. Um, in a year's time, you'll prepare for your annual inspection. Inspectors typically charge by the hour, so the more prepared and organized you can be, the better. The inspector will come out and visit your farm, and then you'll just continue that process over and over again. So the last step is to complete your annual inspection, complete your annual CDFA SOP registration. And at that point, there are really two fees that you're paying every year. And if you see in the next slide, you'll notice that that is just what happens year after year after year. And that, I think, summarizes the 10 steps to organic certification. And I'll pass it back to Grace.
Thanks, Katharina. I think that's such a good overview of the steps to getting certified and what folks can expect. I am going to be taking us through an introduction to the OSP, or the Organic System Plan, that we heard from our panelists last week, and also Katharina has mentioned it. So essentially, an OSP is a big collection of forms that's required for organic certification. Altogether, these forms are the written description of how you farm and meet the organic program rules. It is required by the National Organic Program Regulation for certification, and it helps certifiers understand how you farm without visiting every day, and it helps you ensure that your farm operation is compliant. It is a living document that should be updated at least annually, and you might update it more often if you make a change or alter your farm management practice. You can be out of compliance with your own OSP, and that's something that your inspector will check during your annual inspection. So you want to make sure that this collection of forms that make up your organic system plan are updated. Now I'm going to introduce the general sections of an OSP to give you an idea of what information you will be asked for. The order that I present these in is also not necessarily the order that you will complete them in. Some forms are required for all operations, and others are dependent on whether your farm does a specific activity like make compost. Each certifier has their own unique OSP, so in that 10 steps, it's important to select your certifier prior to filling out the forms to make sure you're filling out the forms in the format required by your certifier and that are applicable to your operation. So as Katharina mentioned, one of the first things you'll do after selecting your certifier is you'll download their certification application packet, which includes an OSP. And in the contract, you'll provide basic information about your farming operation, like who you are, what you grow, and the land you grow on. You must submit a map with your OSP with specific markers like your boundaries, your buffer zones, buildings, production and processing areas, roads, natural resources, and potentially more depending on the requirements of your certifier. And in the OSP form that contains the map, your certifier will give you a list of all of the elements to include in your field map. Then you'll need to provide the land use and history section. And this can be one of the longer forms, so I'm going to break it down a little bit more on the next slide. So in the land use and history section, your certifier will ask about your land use and history to understand more about your farm. Determine the date of last prohibited material application and confirm your certification eligibility. You must provide a signed affirmation of the land's history, either from yourself if you have if you've been managing the land for the past 3 years, or the previous landowner or manager if someone was managing it prior to you in the last 3 years. One of the regulations listed in this section will likely be NOP 205.202, which requires land to have distinct defined boundaries and buffer zones. The buffer zones must be sufficient to prevent the unintended application of a prohibited substance to the crops or contact with a prohibited substance applied to adjoining land that is not under organic management. And boundaries and buffer zones, as you can see in the regulation, aren't defined to be a certain distance. And so it's up to you and your certifier to determine what that safe or least risky distance is, just based on the operation that you manage and your unique risks. You must provide a list of all of the input materials you currently use or intend to use in your organic operation. And this list might be one of the most frequently updated parts of your OSP because it needs to be updated prior to applying any new input. And you must get approval from your certifier prior to using a new input. And this is specifically required by the NOP regulation. So that means prior to applying anything, you would reach out to your certifier and ask for approval and ask to add that to your materials list. In the crop management and natural resource management forms, you will explain how you rotate crops, manage fertility, pests, and protect natural resources and biodiversity. These forms are a good way to get to know the regulatory requirements, reflect on how your practices are aligned with the requirements, and learn about some of the practices that you might want to implement if organic is new to you. So this is an example of a crop rotation and soil management OSP form. Here you can see the kinds of questions you'll be asked about your crop rotation plan. Some of the OSP forms are very straightforward and have check boxes, and you don't have to provide any narrative text. And the crop rotation and soil management form or information is an example of something where your certifier wants more description from you. So the question here is open-ended and asks for a description of your plan to comply with the crop rotation practice standard. The sample answer that's here in the green box is taken from an actual OSP from a grower. And it shows, I think, that the answer doesn't have to be extremely long, so far as it contains sufficient information for your certifier. Excuse me. The natural resources management section of the OSP might be its own form, or it might be in another form that kind of covers similar topics. And this section is about how your farming practices protect and improve the land over time. So the organic rule requires that producers must maintain or improve natural resources in their operation. And natural resources are things like soil and water, but also wetlands, field edges, hedgerows, and wildlife habitat. Examples of practices that meet this requirement include conserving water through drip irrigation or mulching, protecting soil and water from contamination, and supporting biodiversity with cover crops and habitat areas. Most farmers are already doing some of this, and so this form is about clearly describing and documenting those practices and showing them to your inspector during your annual inspection. Pest management is another section or another topic that you'll provide information on. And the pest management section focuses on how you prevent and manage weeds, pests, and diseases on your farm. Organic rules require that preventative practices must be done first, so things like crop rotation, resistant varieties, and mechanical or physical controls. And materials are only able to be used when those steps aren't enough. So in your organic system plan, you would need to describe what types of preventative practices you are using, and then, what your threshold is for applying an organically approved material. In this form, you would also describe what your monitoring plan is, so how you monitor your fields, and why you need, if you do apply materials, why you have chosen to do so. Moving on to production details, you must also provide information about your source of seeds and planting stock. And if you have both organic and non-organic production, so if you're a split operation, you must also describe how you prevent the commingling of organic and non-organic products throughout your operation in the production phase to post-harvest and storage. You must also describe your post-harvest, harvest, and transport procedures, including any cleaning and sanitation, and describe how your products are packaged. At this point, typically, you must attach your product labels for approval by your certifier before you're able to use and display the organic logo on your labels. And so that's something that you should have prepared when you're applying for certification so that it doesn't hold up the process. Finally, you must describe your record keeping system to ensure that your operation is in compliance with the organic record keeping or with the organic standard record keeping requirements. And that will take us right into our next topic. So on the next series of slides, we'll talk about organic record keeping. And at its core, record keeping is simply documenting what you did, when you did it, and where it happened. Your records are required as part of your organic certification and necessary to complete the mass balance and traceback audit exercises as part of your annual organic inspection. And these two exercises are used to prevent fraud in the organic industry. The traceback audit shows that your organic product can be traced back to its field of origin or to its buyer. It's kind of similar to traceability, if you're familiar with that from food safety. And with mass balance, the mass balance exercise shows that the amount of product you sold matches the amount of product that you grew. There are other benefits of organic record keeping. They can assist you with overall farm management and decision making and strengthen food safety traceability and reduce food safety risks. I'm sure there are others too. If you know of any and want to share with folks in the chat, I encourage you to do that. The NOP 205.103 describes the record keeping requirements, and I'm not going to read them out here, but in a nutshell, certified operations must keep records from seed to the sale of their organic products. Records must be kept for at least 5 years, which might change some habits on your farm. The NOP, however, does not specify what types of records or how records must be kept. And this is intended to help farmers use the record keeping system that works best for them. It doesn't prescribe a specific system or set of documents. And in my experience working as a technical assistance provider, the data that you need to keep is more important than the specific type of record that you need to keep. As our farmer panelists shared with us last week, it's important to use the system that works well for you. And the best system is the one that works and that you can be consistent with. Here are some tools that our team at CAFF has developed based on what we've heard works for other farmers. Some folks really stick with paper, either using binders or wall charts, field notebooks to record data. Others like to use digital tools like Google Sheets, Excel, or Airtable. There are some farm management softwares out there like Tend, FarmBright, and Light Farm and Farmhand that are digital and specifically for farmers and might be able to be used across your operation. I've heard from farmers who like to record voice memos when they're applying a material or an input or doing any farm task that they may record later in a piece of paper or a spreadsheet. And then there are AI tools like Pure AI or ChatGPT that may make record keeping on your farm easier. I do understand though that if you just want to be told, like you're a farmer, you're making decisions all of the time, you might just want to be told what records to keep. And that lack of regulatory clarity can for sure be frustrating. Your certifier should be a really good resource on record keeping. In their organic system plan, here are a couple of screenshots here. You can see that certifiers should specify what information needs to be tracked and recorded so that it is as clear as can be for you. These are some examples of the core records that need to be kept to comply with the NOP. This list is not comprehensive, but I think it gives you a good idea of what you need, or you can compare this list to what you currently keep. So you'll need your land use records and farm map, seed, sourcing, planting, and crop list, information on your input and material usage, field activities, harvest, storage, sales, and distribution, equipment cleaning logs, and records that support your biodiversity practices. So These could be a conservation plan, monitoring records, an IPM plan, just examples, and maybe you have some more as well. So on the next few slides, I am just going to show some examples of different ways to capture the same information required for organic certification. So I'll show two options for kind of collecting similar or the same information. So some farmers might prefer more detailed task-specific logs, like a dedicated seeding and planting log. And these work well if you want to track things like the equipment that you used, bed counts, or varieties in one place. Others might want to use a more general field activity log that could cover multiple activities like planting, cover cropping, inputs, and harvest, where these activities are recorded together by date and location. Both approaches are definitely acceptable. What matters most is that the information is complete and consistent. The organic seed search record templates are specifically for documenting your organic seed search. So this came up quite a few times last week, and I wanted to expand upon it this week. Organic rules require that you use organic seed when it's commercially available. If you use non-organic seed, you need to be able to show that you looked for an equivalent organic option and couldn't find one that met your needs. If organic seed isn't commercially available, these forms, this one and the next one, will show who you contacted, what you were looking for, and why non-organic seed was used. So this is just an example of one record that you should keep, and the information that it asks you for. And then this would be another version of an organic seed search record. The next templates are for tracking the materials that you apply to your field. So things like fertilizers, soil amendments, and pest management products. This is a simple version that works well if you want a quick running log with date, field or parcel, location, what you applied, why, and how much. And then this is a more detailed version that captures the same information but adds organic status verification, so whether the product is OMRI listed, along with the source or the manufacturer and the application method. So if you used a backpack sprayer or if you used a tractor, piece of equipment, compost spreader, and this can be especially helpful for inspections. So that was a lot, and that was kind of fast. That's it for the record keeping section. There is a lot more we could cover, but hopefully this gives you an idea of the NOP record keeping requirements and how your operation can comply without being too overwhelming. We do have a bunch of record keeping resources that we will be sharing with you in our follow-up email and in the resource guide. And so I do encourage you to check those out for more examples and templates. And there are some videos in there sharing tips from other farmers, what has worked well for them. So now I'm going to pass it over to Katharina to talk about where you can access resources.
Great. Thanks so much, Grace, and thanks for providing such a great overview of organic system plans and what records need to be kept, and even providing some examples of how to keep those records. It is a lot of information, but I know everyone on this webinar is going to get to where they want to be in terms of the transition to organic process. It just takes a minute to understand all the different pieces. And there are a lot of people out here to help you through this process. So I want to highlight a couple of technical assistance providers that work here in California. Some of these folks work nationally as well. The NCAT's ATRA Sustainable Agriculture Program has a lot of great resources on their website. This is a nonprofit They also have some videos and even a 1-800 helpline that you can call. CCOF Foundation is the nonprofit arm of the organic certifier CCOF. The CCOF Foundation has office hours that happen every Tuesday from 11 to noon that you can hop on and ask your specific questions about your farm. They also have a lot of great educational resources on their website and a great YouTube page. Most certifiers, organic certifiers, will have some educational resources on their website. I know Oregon Tilth does, for example, and many will also have YouTube pages to help you navigate all the different elements of this process. Um, the applicant support teams at a certifier can also be really helpful. So you can call the number and ask their questions of whichever certifiers you're working with. The Rodale Institute is a nonprofit research institute that has its headquarters in Pennsylvania and has been working in the organic space for decades. They have a new research station down in Ventura and have consultants that work in California. Um, there are also two groups that focus a lot on biodiversity and conservation practices. These are really important elements of being a certified organic farm. Each county in California has access to a resource conservation district, and they're often offering technical assistance related to soil health, supporting things like pollinators and other beneficial insects. So reach out to them. The USDA NRCS is a federal agency that offers technical assistance related to a number of different agricultural conservation practices. Um, they also have offices in every county and are another great resource to rely on. They have some specific organic programs too, so be sure to ask them about that. CAFF, the Community Alliance with Family Farmers that Grace works for, has a lot of different information relevant to farmers, but also a lot of great information for folks transitioning to organic. UC Cooperative Extension has a county office in every county in California. And those offices have farm advisors and other technical service providers that can answer questions around a lot of different topics related to farming, including your specific production questions. And then the group that I work for, the UC Organic Agriculture Institute, we're also happy to help and have information on our website as well. Two other groups that I want to highlight, if Grace can help me with that, is yeah, I mentioned the certifiers before, but also your county ag commissioners can answer questions as well. They are regulators, so that's something to be aware of, but they're also really helpful, nice people. And then the other thing I wanted to flag is that there is going to be an organic record keeping workshop taking place on February 23rd. That's an hour and 15 minutes of just record keeping for organic systems. That's happening as part of the 2026 Small Farms Conference here in California. And so that's another thing to look out for. Um, in addition to this kind of technical assistance, there's also financial assistance available. And I want to highlight three specific programs. So one important one to know about is the USDA has an organic certification cost share program. This is basically a program that you submit your certification fee receipt to this program, and they will cover 75% or up to $750 of the certification fee. That's administered through both the Farm Service Agency and then also the CDFA State Organic Program. Typically, there's funding every year. Right now, the funding for last year hasn't been released, but we're hopeful that it will be available soon, and hope that it will be available again this year. I mentioned the NRCS earlier. They have a number of different types of cost share programs, but one that's especially useful for organic producers or people transitioning to organic is their EQIP program. So that's one to ask the NRCS about if you meet with them. And then finally, right now, there is a transition to organic pilot program here in California. A number of different organizations in the state have been managing these grants, but for the upcoming year in 2026, the group that's has grants to award is the CCOF Foundation. So if you get selected for one of these grants, you can receive $10,000 a year for 3 years to help cover the cost of transitioning to organic. This tends to be a reimbursement program, so you pay the money up front and then they reimburse you. And then finally, CAFF maintains a really great database for farmers. It's a grant database. We'll share that with the resources we send by email after this webinar is done. So I think that, if I'm right, that wraps up the main part of our presentation. Because we started a little bit late, I think maybe we'll hold maybe about 5 minutes for questions. Grace, what do you think about that? And then we'll have much more time during the office hours during the second hour of this meeting. I know the chat has been really, really busy. Thank you, Claire, for helping to answer some of the questions there. Grace, have you had a chance to look at the questions and see if there's any that you want to answer right now?
So it appears to me that most all of them have been answered. Um, I can scroll through and check. I think there is not, yeah, there are some questions about the certificate that accompanies this course and completing that. And I want to make the distinction that the certificate that you would get would just be a certificate of completion. It wouldn't have anything to do with getting certified organic. That is something that goes through the CDFA State Organic Program and the third party that you're choosing to work with, the third party certifier.
Maybe I'll jump in just because some people might not have been reading the chat box. So, one question that came in was, are OSP forms from different certifiers available from them before you decide on who to apply with, who to apply for, or who to go with? And the answer is yes. Typically, a certifier can give you the OSP form. You can look at it and see if the format works for you. And that's a great thing to ask as part of your decision process between certifiers. Um, there was also a question about buffer zones. Grace mentioned buffer zones during her presentation. That's the area between the organic farm and the next area that might be using pesticides or something like that. So it's basically a border around the edge of your organic farming operation that protects your organic farm from things like pesticide drift or water runoff from contaminated water sources. There isn't a specific size that a buffer zone needs to be because the NOP recognizes that the risk might be really different if your neighbor is doing an aerial spray of a pesticide or if you're next to a natural area. Things like hedgerows or tree lines can also help act as a buffer. But that's something that you can talk about with your certifier. typically I've seen people at least have the width of a dirt road, but sometimes it's larger than that too, again, depending on the risk next door.
I do want to flag, Katharina, there's a question from Kevin that came in that I don't think was answered. And the question is there a cost for the initial inspection? And so that would be for an operations first inspection as a certified operation. There is a cost for the inspection and every year thereafter, and the inspection cost is determined upon the hourly rate for the inspector, which you can find in your certifier's um, certification manual. They have that information, and the more prepared you are, the better record keeping you have, the less time an inspector needs to spend on your farm, and therefore the lower cost of your inspection. So the record keeping really goes hand in hand with the cost of an inspection.
That's a great point, Grace. I think maybe in the interest of staying on time, what we'll do is we'll continue to answer questions during the office hours, which will begin in about 7 minutes. One thing that we'll do during those office hours is I think we'll make sure to touch on um, just reiterate the rules around seeds, planting stock, transplants, and microgreens, and whether the seed or planting stock needs to be organic or not. We'll come back to that one during the office hours. Um, Grace, does that sound okay with you?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. Um, so in that case, we want to thank you all for being here today again, for asking so many great questions. Thanks also for your patience as we got started a little late today. Next week, we're going to be learning about organic market channels. We have a buyer panel representing different types of market channels who will be speaking about what they're looking for when they're buying organic products. So it should be a really interesting conversation. You are all, of course, welcome to stay on for the office hours and to continue getting your questions answered. In addition to Grace and myself, Claire Davis from Oregon Tilth will be on the line. Claire has been doing a great job answering questions in the chat as well.
Thanks, folks. We really, really very much appreciate you joining us today and for your participation and engagement in the chat.